The desert didn't whisper that morning. It screamed. Wind tore across the flatland like a memory trying to claw its way back. Boots shuffled through the dust, slow and staggering. Her name was Sadie, though she hadn't heard it in days. Just curses. Just fists. The blood on her lip was dry now. Her dress, torn at the hem, clung to her legs in the heat. The sun beat down like judgment. Each step sank her deeper into the sand. She didn't cry. There weren't tears left. Behind her, miles back, was a cedar post with a rope still swinging. "Ain't how I wanted to die," she muttered. Her voice barely cracked the wind. The bruises on her arms told stories nobody asked for. The brand on her shoulder, raw, blistered, marked her as Ezekiel's. Stepdaughter by law, prisoner by force. He called it protection. He called it love. He lied. She'd told him no, told him she wasn't helping him rob the train. That's when the rage boiled over, a backhand, a spit. Tied her to that post like a scarecrow and left her to the buzzards, but the rope came loose and her legs remembered what survival felt like. Now, they gave out. She dropped near a thicket, dry brush snapping under her weight. The sky spun above her and all she saw was white heat and wings circling. Then, the sound. Boots. Slow, deliberate. Not the kind that chase, the kind that decide. A man stepped into view, wide-brimmed hat, coat worn thin by time and sun. He kneeled beside her, silent. She tried to speak, but coughed dust instead. He didn't ask her name, just touched her throat, feeling for life. Then his eyes drifted to the brush behind her. Leaves arranged in a pattern, too neat for nature. He reached forward, spread the leaves wide, and the ground gave way. A camp, hidden beneath the thicket, collapsed inward. Broken crates, rusted knives, a trail of dried blood, and a red bandana marked with a coiled snake. Ezekiel's gi, Bangsigil. The man stared for a long moment, then looked back at her. He lifted her gently like a broken bird, voice low, rough like gravel. "Ain't no place to die, girl. Not today." The wind carried them both away, and the sun dipped just slightly behind the ridge. The ranch sat on the edge of nowhere, a split-rail fence, a leaning windmill, and the kind of silence that pressed against your chest. The man brought her there before the coyotes could sniff blood. His name was Ellis Cade. Folks around here called him the last honest man with a rifle. He laid her on a cot inside the barn, where hay dust danced in a shaft of amber light. Her breathing was shallow. Fever crept up her neck like fire under skin. Ellis soaked a cloth in rainwater and dabbed her forehead. She flinched. Instinct from too many blows. He didn't pull away. "Easy," he muttered. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you here." Outside, the wind changed. It carried with it the faintest scent of ash and rot. Ellis stood, his gaze drawn to the edge of the property. Something wasn't right. He walked to the brush pile she'd collapsed into earlier. Leaves again. Arranged, deliberate, like a trap left mid-spring. He crouched, pushed them aside. The earth shifted under his hand. Dry brush gave way to hollow ground. Beneath the leaves was a pit, sunken and half-forgotten. The planks caved in with a groan. Inside lay the remnants of an outlaw camp, a rusted pistol, an empty bottle, a shredded saddlebag. But it was the bones that froze his breath. Small, human. Maybe a boy. Maybe not. Then, the flash of red. A bandana still clutched in skeletal fingers, emblazoned with a coiled snake and twin fangs. Ezekiel Boone. Ellis's jaw tightened. He spat in the dust. Back in the barn, Sadie stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed, half-dreaming. "Where?" "Safe," he said, voice calm but firm. "You're at my ranch. You passed out. Near something bad?" She tried to sit up. Pain stopped her halfway. He steadied her without a word. Her lips cracked as she whispered, "He's coming back. He never lets go." Ellis looked toward the horizon. The sun was dropping and the shadows grew long. "Then he'll find I ain't the letting go type either." The barn creaked as dusk settled in. Somewhere out there, evil stirred. But inside those walls, for the first time in days, she closed her eyes without fear. Night passed like a slow-moving storm, quiet but full of weight. By morning the wind had calmed and the sky turned soft over the Cade Ranch. In the barn, Sadie woke to the sound of boots on wood, steady and unhurried. She sat up, wincing. Her shoulder throbbed like fire, the brand peeking from beneath a torn sleeve. Her eyes scanned the room, walls patched with old wood, tools hanging neat, lantern light flickering warm. It didn't feel like a trap. It felt still. Ellis stood at the doorway, arms crossed, silhouette cut against the pale sunrise. "You hungry?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded once. He handed her a tin cup of water and a slice of hard bread. She drank fast, too fast, coughed, wiped her mouth. "Why'd you help me?" she rasped. He didn't answer right away, just looked at her like he'd seen this story before. "'Cause somebody didn't." Silence settled again, thick as smoke. Later, she sat near the porch while Ellis fixed a broken rail on the corral. She watched him, methodical, quiet, like a man trying not to remember too much. She spoke suddenly. "He's planning something big." Ellis didn't stop working, just nodded once. "Dry Needle Pass. He's got men waiting. Gonna hit a convoy." That made Ellis pause. He turned, face grim. "Gold?" Sadie nodded. "Army shipment. 2 days out." He looked out past the fence line where hills rolled like broken knuckles and trouble rode easy. "You sure?" She touched her shoulder, fingers brushing the scar. "He told me. Said if I didn't help I'd rot out there. Said I'd die alone and no one would care." Ellis stepped down from the rail. Walked over, not close. Just enough. He was wrong. Her eyes burned, but she didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. Inside, Ellis opened a trunk and pulled out a long rifle wrapped in cloth. He ran his hand over it slow, like greeting an old friend. "Dry Needle Pass ain't far, but it's close enough to matter." The wind shifted again, and for the first time in a long time, Sadie felt it. Not safety, but the start of it. The sun dipped low, spilling gold across the ridges, and the ranch grew long shadows that clawed at the ground. Ellis paced the porch, eyes scanning the horizon. Dust spiraled in the distance. Sadie huddled near the barn door, tense, every muscle ready to bolt. Then came the sound. Hooves faint at first, then sharp, echoing against stone and sand. Sadie froze. "He's here," she whispered. The words were brittle, barely carrying over the wind. Ezekiel Boone rode into view, lantern swinging from his belt, face twisted with a calm that didn't reach his eyes. 3 of his men flanked him, silent like shadows. The desert held its breath. Ellis stepped out from the porch, old rifle cradled against his chest. He didn't flinch. The leather of his coat creaked, the smell of smoke lingering from the barn stove behind him. Ezekiel stopped his horse, boot resting on the stirrup. "You seen a girl come through?" His voice was syrupy, slow, dangerous. "Slippery little thing. Mine by blood." Sadie shrank against the barn post, her heart hammering in her chest like a drum. Ellis's voice was calm, even. "Ain't seen no girl worth chasing lately." Ezekiel's lips twitched in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You lie, rancher. I can smell her." Ellis shifted his weight, eyes never leaving the outlaw's face. "Then you better follow your nose somewhere else." A tense silence stretched, thick and brittle. The sun kissed the horizon, painting the dust in red and gold, like blood spilled across the land. Ezekiel's hand twitched near his gun, but he measured the wind, the distance, the empty spaces behind Ellis. Slowly, deliberately, he gave a low curse and motioned for his men to back off. The three riders melted into the shadows, disappearing down the ridge. Sadie exhaled, trembling, the air suddenly sharp and sweet. She dropped her hands from her face. "He saw me. He knows." Ellis didn't respond. He watched the dust settle, the horizon swallow the last flicker of the riders. Finally, he muttered more to himself than her. He won't stop, not till he tries. Sadie's knees weakened. She sank to the ground, letting the barn support her. Tears blurred her vision, but they weren't just fear. A small seed of relief had taken root. The wind shifted, carrying away curses and carrying in the scent of pine from the ridge. The night would be long, but for now, they had a moment. A fragile, burning moment of quiet before the storm that was coming. The ride to Stillwater Ridge was slow, the mules' hooves clopping over cracked earth. Dust rose in thin clouds behind them, swirling with each gust of the desert wind. Sadie hunched under a tattered blanket, arms crossed over the bruises that still burned. Ellis rode beside her, steady, silent, the kind of man who spoke more with presence than words. The town appeared like a mirage, a saloon, a weathered sheriff's office, and wooden storefronts that leaned into each other as if whispering secrets. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional gust rattling a sign. Time moved differently here, measured in sunbeams and the creak of doors. Inside the saloon, the air smelled of old whiskey and worn leather. Ellis pushed the door open. The bell jingled faintly, announcing strangers. Sheriff Amos Granger, a man in his 60s with a limp and eyes hardened by decades, looked up from polishing a revolver, his stare pierced like a rifle's. "Sight." Ellis nodded. "Sheriff, got a problem." Sadie's voice trembled, thin and urgent. "It's Ezekiel Boone. He's planning to ambush a military convoy. Gold shipment. 2 days out." Granger's hands froze over the revolver. Silence stretched. Then he said, low and gravelly, "I've heard whispers, but proof's scarce." Sadie lifted her sleeve, showing the raw brand on her shoulder. Granger's gaze shifted. Shame flickered behind his eyes. He looked away, swallowing hard. Ellis leaned forward. "He won't wait. If we don't act, folks will die." The sheriff exhaled slowly. "I can spare 3 deputies. That's all." Sadie's eyes widened. 3? That's not enough." Ellis shook his head. "We don't need an army. Just enough to make the devil bleed." Granger's lips pressed together. He studied the young woman, then the rancher beside her. "You're brave, or foolish. Maybe both." Sadie looked down, her fingers tracing the scar that burned like memory. She swallowed the fear and squared her shoulders. "I don't care which. He'll stop one way or another." Outside, the wind rattled the saloon windows. Ellis adjusted the rifle slung across his back, scanning the horizon even here in town. Shadows of the coming night stretched long and cruel. The sheriff nodded finally. "We ride at first light. Make ready." Sadie let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For the first time since Boone's men chased her across the desert, she felt a flicker of hope. Fragile, yes, but stronger than the fear that had tried to swallow her whole. Ellis glanced at her, voice low, steady. "Tomorrow, we set things right." And for now, the town held its breath, waiting. Night draped over the ranch like a heavy velvet curtain, the kind that swallowed sound and made every creak of wood and whisper of wind feel alive. Inside the barn, Sadie moved carefully, helping Ellis set up crude defenses. Tripwire, res, sharpened stakes, and lanterns rigged to flare at the first disturbance. Every movement was deliberate, silent, a dance with shadows. Outside, the desert was still. Too still. Even the coyotes had retreated, ears twitching against the tension. Sadie's pulse raced, every beat like a drum of warning. "They'll come," Ellis murmured, checking the rifle's lock. "Best be ready." Midnight arrived on silent wings. A torch flickered at the edge of the ridge, then another. Shadows grew long, twisting and crawling over the dry earth. 7 riders, faces masked, emerged like ghosts. Ezekiel led them, lantern in hand, his calm menace cutting through the night. Sadie's hand shook as she gripped a wooden stake. They're really here. Ellis pressed a finger to his lips. Not a sound. Wait for my mark. Suddenly, one torch arced through the air. It struck the barn's roof, flames licking wood like hungry fingers. Sadie screamed, the sound raw and sharp. Ellis shoved her behind a trough, shielding her. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the canyon walls. Sparks from bullets glinted like fireflies in the dark. One outlaw tried to sneak behind them, but Sadie drove the stake into his chest. A grunt, a flash of eyes wide in fear, and he collapsed. Ellis fired through the smoke, each shot deliberate, precise. The wind carried the acrid scent of burning hay and gunpowder. Ezekiel cursed, voice low and venomous. "Get her! She's mine!" The barn shook as fire spread, tongues of orange consuming dry timber. Ellis took a wound in his shoulder but refused to fall. Pain coiled through him, but his hand stayed steady on the rifle. Every shadow seemed alive, moving faster than eyes could follow. Sadie fought through the fear, each action instinctual. She realized then, the fire, the bullets, the chaos. It wasn't just survival. It was defiance. Voiceover cut in, low and heavy. Sometimes the night don't end till it takes something from you. Blood, hope, or both. The battle raged on, every heartbeat a testament to willpower. Eve, we scream a reminder of the stakes. Outside, the wind shifted again, whispering through the canyon. The dawn would decide who survived, and only the strong or the lucky would see it. The night sky hung heavy over the burning barn, stars smothered by smoke and ash. Ellis crouched behind a haystack, rifle trembling from both pain and rage. His shoulder throbbed, blood seeping through the worn coat, but he didn't falter. Sadie's hands were raw, gripping the stake she'd driven into a man just moments ago. Every muscle screamed, but neither of them moved. They couldn't. Not yet. Then, a sharp crack echoed across the ridge. A shotgun blast cut through the chaos, scattering embers and sending the remaining outlaws reeling. From the darkness, Sheriff Amos Granger and 2 deputies emerged, their horses kicking up dust and lanterns swinging. Ezekiel cursed, voice low and venomous. "You fools, you'll pay for this." He grabbed Sadie, yanking her toward his horse. Panic surged through her, but Ellis, bleeding and determined, limped forward, gripping a hatchet. He hurled it with a grunt born of desperation. It buried itself deep into Ezekiel's thigh. The outlaw shrieked, releasing her. Granger's deputies moved swiftly, guns trained, rounding up the remaining riders with precise shots and command. The wind carried their shouts and curses, echoing across the canyon like a storm. Sadie staggered to Ellis, breath ragged, soot smudged across her face. "Is it over?" she whispered. Ellis, grim, scanned the horizon. "For now." Ezekiel, writhing and furious, glared at her. "You're dead, girl. You hear me? Dead." Sadie straightened, her eyes fierce and unyielding. "Not today." Sheriff Granger stepped forward, spitting in the dust. "You'll swing for this, Boone. I'll see to it myself." His voice was calm, absolute, like justice incarnate. The outlaws were secured, chained and quiet. The air menace dissolved by the presence of law. The fire's glow reflected off the sweat and grime of those who had fought, a harsh orange halo that illuminated survival and sacrifice alike.